I still see the rain hitting the glass that night. Not gentle drops, but shards of ice that mirrored the pieces of my heart. David stood there, his face a mask of cold resolve I'd never seen, holding the door open. "Get out, Clara," he said, his voice flat, emotionless. "Brittany needs this space." My hand instinctively went to the slight swell beneath my coat, the life we'd planned, the future I was carrying. And I realized in that freezing, wet moment, the lavish life I thought was mine was nothing but a cheap set piece. The man I loved had just traded me and his unborn child for a fleeting affair, and my world had just imploded on the polished marble floor of the home we built. If you're watching this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Do let me know in the comments of where you're watching from. My name is Clara Sterling. For 5 years, I was Clara Vance, the middle daughter of a quiet, respectable family from Denver. When I met David Sterling, he was a driven, ambitious finance associate. I was working as a curator at a small art gallery, happy to live a life far removed from the conspicuous consumption I'd been raised around. David was charming, focused, and utterly devoted. He had big plans, and I was happy to be the supportive foundation he built his life upon. Over the next few years, David soared. He became a partner, bought the gorgeous colonial home in Greenwich, Connecticut, and our life became a magazine spread of perfection. Dinner parties, summer trips to Nantucket, and the promise of a family. I got pregnant in the late fall. It was planned, joyous. We painted the nursery a soft cream and gray. David started referring to me as the mother of the air. I thought we were invincible. The change was slow, insidious. First, it was the late nights that stretched into early mornings. Then, the careful excuses that didn't quite line up. I told myself it was the pressure of work, the big merger he was handling. But the coldness in his eyes when he looked at me wasn't about spreadsheets. It was about indifference. The day David ended it was 3 days after my 6-month ultrasound. I was humming, folding tiny newborn outfits, when he walked in, not with flowers, but with a manila envelope. "These are divorce papers, Clara," he said, standing too far away. I laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "A joke, David? Because I really don't feel like—" "It's not a joke. I'm filing for separation, effective immediately." He cut me off, emotionless. "Brittany is moving in. She's better for my brand, Clara. She understands the level I'm playing at now." Brittany Wells, the new, younger, impeccably dressed marketing VP at his firm. I'd seen the way she looked at him at corporate events, like he was a promotion waiting to happen. I pulled the ultrasound picture out of my pocket, tears finally blurring my vision. "And this? Our son? Where does he fit into your brand?" David glanced at the photo, a flicker of discomfort, and then a dismissive shrug. "A complication. My lawyer, Mr. Thorne, has prepared a settlement. The house is in my name, you know that. You'll get a modest stipend until the birth, and then monthly support. But you need to leave. Now." The shock was a physical blow. The modest stipend? David was worth tens of millions, and he was offering me barely enough to cover a cheap apartment, knowing I hadn't worked full-time in years to support his ascent. He hadn't just cheated. He was trying to erase me. That's when the rain started, and David ushered me out the door. The moment he slammed it shut, leaving me standing on the porch with one suitcase and a 6-month belly, I felt something in me harden. The quiet, supportive Clara Vance was gone. The woman left shivering in the rain was a mother protecting her child, and she was furious. I drove aimlessly for hours, the car my only sanctuary. I couldn't call my parents. Not yet. They believed I was perfectly happy and settled. I had consciously kept my distance, preferring the simplicity of David's world to the complexity of my own family. My family. The Vances. People knew the name, but few outside the inner circles knew the scope of the Vance family holdings. My father, Robert Vance, was a quiet titan in venture capital. My older brothers, Mason and Ethan, were, quite simply, forces of nature. Mason ran Vance Global Holdings, a private equity group that controlled entire sectors, and Ethan led Vance Tech, a powerhouse responsible for half the world's most ubiquitous social media and AI platforms. They weren't just wealthy, they were a lineage of American royalty, the kind that moved markets with a whisper. I had always insisted on being Clara, just Clara. No bodyguards, no foundation galas, no trust funds. I wanted to earn my own life. That stubborn independence had brought me here, parked illegally on a dark street corner, with an eviction notice and a baby on the way. I finally pulled into a cheap, nondescript motel, the kind where the carpet smelled of stale cigarettes. I called the only friend I trusted, my childhood confidant, Sarah. Sarah was horrified. The audacity! David Sterling just made the biggest mistake of his life. I have no resources, Sarah. Everything was joint, but somehow the titles were all his. My voice cracked. He took everything. He thinks he has you cornered, Clara. He thinks you're the gallery curator who lives paycheck to paycheck. He doesn't know about the family. And I want to keep it that way. For now, I need to handle this without them thinking I failed. I whispered, the pride still there, buried under the pain. But a week later, reality hit. The divorce settlement David offered was a joke. Thorne, his lawyer, was ruthless, threatening to tie up the proceedings for years, knowing I had no immediate funds for a drawn-out custody battle. He even suggested I was emotionally unstable, citing the stress of pregnancy. I looked at the ultrasound picture again. My son deserved more than a mother fighting out of a dingy motel. He deserved protection. I swallowed my pride and called the number I hadn't dialed in 5 years. The phone rang twice. A deep, smooth voice answered. Mason Vance, he stated. All business. I took a deep breath, trying to sound composed. Mason, it's Clara. There was a silence on the line so profound I could hear the faint static of the connection. Then a sharp intake of breath. Clara? Is everything all right? You never call this number. His tone shifted instantly from executive to fiercely protective older brother. No, Mason. Everything is not all right. I need your help. Not your money, just your advice. And your lawyers. I quickly recounted the story, keeping the worst of the emotional damage hidden behind clipped business-like phrases. I told him about the eviction, the mistress, the insulting settlement, and the threat to my stability. When I finished, the silence returned, heavier this time. So, let me be clear. Mason's voice was dangerously low, a calm before a Category 5 hurricane. This man, David Sterling, kicked his 6-month pregnant wife out of their jointly funded home for a mistress and is attempting to leverage our unborn nephew's future for a pittance? That's the gist, I admitted softly. Give me his lawyer's name and address. Give me David's firm's name. Give me everything, Clara. Mason, I just need a good lawyer, nothing dramatic. I don't want to ruin him. Just get what's fair and ensure my son's security. Ruin him? Mason scoffed. Little sister, he just declared war on the wrong family. You kept your name a secret to protect him from us. Now we will protect you from him. He hung up. Less than 5 minutes later, my other brother, Ethan, called, his voice high-pitched with controlled fury. Mason just briefed me. That scumbag thinks he can mess with a Vance? He thinks he can throw out the mother of a Vance grandchild? That house David Sterling lives in? That was a piece of land Mason's company was eyeing 5 years ago. David's entire company infrastructure runs on a leased server farm from a Vance Tech subsidiary. He's been living in our ecosystem and didn't even know it. Ethan, the tech genius, was the strategist. Mason, the finance wizard, was the executioner. They were already coordinating. Ethan, please, no scorched earth. Just secure my position. Too late, Clara. The scorched earth policy was initiated the moment you were left on the porch. Now, we rebuild your fortress on the ashes of his empire. But first, we make a statement. I'm sending a car. Pack the rest of your things. You're coming home. The next morning, I was no longer at the motel. I was at the Vance estate, wrapped in a plush robe, staring out at the expansive Long Island Sound, preparing for the storm I had unleashed. The revenge wasn't loud. It was surgical, precise, and utterly terrifying. Mason handled the financial side. Within 48 hours of my call, David Sterling's world began to unravel. First, his lawyer, Thorne, received a letter from Vance Global Holdings legal counsel. A full binder detailing David's professional indiscretions, minor ethics violations, and potential tax irregularities that David had always casually brushed away. The letter also contained a new settlement offer. David was to relinquish all claim to the house, transferring the deed to me, pay a $10 million lump sum for prenatal and child support, and sign a full waiver of custody rights for the first 5 years, or face a simultaneous, very public lawsuit and an IRS audit. Thorne, recognizing the Vance letterhead, immediately advised David to comply. David, however, was arrogant. He refused. They're bluffing, Thorne. Who the hell is Clara Vance? She's nobody. That afternoon, Mason made his move. Vance Global Holdings, through a shell company, executed a hostile maneuver against the main client of David's firm, causing an immediate, catastrophic loss of revenue. Then, Mason's team initiated a massive short-selling campaign on the firm's stock, causing a panic. Simultaneously, Ethan struck. David's firm used their private leased server farm for all their proprietary trading algorithms. Ethan simply had the server farm, owned by a Vance subsidiary, issue a non-renewal notice, effective in 72 hours, citing contractual changes and infrastructure reallocation. The firm would lose its digital spine. David Sterling was suddenly staring down the barrel of an imploding company, a potential SEC investigation, and a crumbling career. The final stroke of genius came on a Tuesday. I hadn't been back to the house, but Mason's team orchestrated a public spectacle I only heard about later. David, still defiant, had planned a small celebratory party for Brittany moving in, desperate to show his peers he was winning. Halfway through the event, as David was giving a smug toast, a large, black, unmarked van pulled up. Out stepped 2 impeccably dressed men who served David with a court order. The order wasn't for the divorce. It was a temporary restraining order issued on behalf of the ownership of the property. Me. The house had already been quietly transferred. The papers ordered him to vacate immediately and prohibited him from accessing the property or coming within 100 feet of Clara Sterling and her unborn child. As David stood there, humiliated, a third man walked out of the van. He was carrying a massive, professionally framed photo. It was the photo David had dismissed. The 6-month ultrasound. He held it up and mounted it on a newly installed sign at the end of the driveway, right beneath a large engraved nameplate that read, "The Vance Residence." The mistress Brittany tried to console David, but the final devastating blow was yet to come. Ethan had ensured that every major finance blog, industry newsletter, and social media platform that mattered received an anonymous, meticulously detailed leak. Financial partner David Sterling's career crumbles amidst allegations of corporate fraud and the shocking mistreatment of his pregnant wife, Clara Vance, daughter of the Vance dynasty. The world learned who I was. The world saw David's betrayal in stark relief. Brittany, realizing she had hitched her star to a falling, burning cinder, dumped David on the spot, citing irreconcilable differences in long-term goals, and vanished back into the corporate jungle. 6 weeks later, I stood in my old living room, the deed in my hand. The house felt cleansed, empty of David's cold presence. Mason and Ethan had ensured the house was mine, clear of all debt and fully secured for the future. The divorce was finalized quickly. David, terrified of further investigation and ruin, accepted the final offer, which included the $10 million in trust for my son and a complete surrender of rights. He left the state soon after, trading his multi-million-dollar life for a quiet, anonymous existence. My brothers didn't just give me money. They gave me back my identity and my self-worth. They reminded me what family meant. They showed me that the wealth I had run from could also be a shield, and that true power lies not in arrogance, but in loyalty. I started working again, but this time, it was different. Mason helped me establish the Vance Endowment for the Arts, giving me a legitimate, purpose-driven platform that utilized my curatorial skills and my family's incredible influence. 3 months later, my son, Robert Mason Vance, was born. He was strong, healthy, and had his Uncle Mason's calm demeanor and his Uncle Ethan's piercing blue eyes. I held him, rocking him gently in the newly redecorated nursery. No more cream and gray, but rich blues and golds, reflecting his powerful legacy. The final lesson David taught me was that you can never truly hide who you are. He had seen a simple art curator, easily discarded. He never saw the Vance blood, the familial loyalty, or the unstoppable force of 2 billionaire brothers who would destroy an empire to protect their little sister and her child. My life is quiet now, anchored by my son and my work. I have everything I need, not because David gave it to me, but because I finally accepted the love and protection I deserved. And sometimes when I stand on the porch, looking out over the manicured lawn, I smile, remembering the chilling rain and the cold slam of the door. David Sterling had kicked out his pregnant wife, but he had inadvertently paved the way for a powerful mother to return home, surrounded by a legion of wealth and loyalty, ready to claim her destiny. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories. And please, share your own experiences in the comments below. Reading them helps all of us feel a little less alone.